So straight out the box, turn it the right way. Oh, I did have it the right way. As you see, it comes well packaged. It's got a really nice foam surround, and it's the shape of the actual plane as well. And here we go. On first looks, this is a really nicely designed little hand plane, or block plane should I say. It's got these two depth setters on either side. If you're looking for a certain depth of planing, you can just unscrew these little thumb screws here, adjust it to where you need it, and lock it back down again. Now, on first looks and straight out the box, this thing actually looks really nice. I mean, it's not as stylish and as beautiful as some of my other Stanley hand planes, but it does have that little nice bit of charm. Everything on it is nicely made. All the little thumb screws as well, they're nailed really nicely, so it's easy to use. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break down this plane and find out a little bit more about it. So let's take off this cap and see how this comes apart. So I've loosened that off. So the cap is held in place by this little piece here, and as you can see, there's a little magnet in there. So there you go, there's the magnet in the back, and the magnet will obviously go onto the blade or the iron. And I'm going to take the actual iron out now. It feels very sharp. I'm just running my finger very gently over it. It does feel very sharp. It's got a double bevel on it. There we go, you can see the double bevel there. So it's been ground once and then ground a second time, just very slightly up from the next one. So there's the blade itself. I'm quite happy with that. Going back to the actual plane, I'm going to take off these. I really don't see the point of these whatsoever. I think this is more of a gimmick. If the blade actually went the whole distance of the width of the plane, it would make a lot more sense. But as you can see, it stops there. You can get hand planes that go all the way to the edge, and I think these pieces would work a lot easier for that. You have an adjustable front section which you can tighten and loosen using this thumb screw here. But again, I have never ever used this feature on any of my other hand planes. I tend to just set it at a particular distance away from the blade and then leave it. The adjustment screw is very simple indeed. It almost looks like a sort of M3 threaded bar in there, which you can then raise or lower the blade. So as you can see there's a little carriage riding on that threaded bar, and then that just raises and lowers the blade. It's very, very simple. So the lever cap, as we've discussed, has this thumb screw, and you have this ball on the end of the screw, which then goes into that circle piece. But it does seem to work, and it holds the blade in extremely well. So I'm just going to pop everything back together again. I'm just going to allow that blade to fall into place. On the blade as well, we've got these two holes, and they reference into this pin here. So this is what's going to raise and lower the blade for us. And so there are two positions, one lower and one higher, and that's purely, the more I sharpen this blade, it's going to get shorter and shorter, and it will eventually get to the point where it will need to be replaced. So having those two holes will give me a little bit longer of this blade, so I can sharpen it more and more until I get to the point where I need to swap it over to the next one, and then that'll give me a little bit more life. If I pop this back on using the magnet, and I'll put it roughly into place, and then I'll allow the ball to find it, and then I can tighten it down like so, and that is nicely secured in place. It's not going to go anywhere. And then to set the height for the blade, all I'm going to do is just very slightly slack off this thumb screw here, and then looking down the sole of the plane, I'm just going to advance the blade forward until we can see it protruding. Now if we look down the sole, you can very slightly see the blade coming through. Now I don't want to protrude that blade any further at all. I just want to see a very slight, or the very tip of that blade coming through. So that's perfect. I can adjust this when I start using it. If I'm finding I'm not taking a deep enough cut, I can make a slight adjustment and then run it again. The main issue that I have is that I want to make sure that that blade is perfectly aligned with the sole. But the downside is that there is no adjustable on this whatsoever. Now if I take some of my other hand planes, for example, you do have an adjuster on the rear, so you can align your blade to the sole of the plane. Now this little block plane does not have that feature. You're relying on the factory bevel of the blade to be perfectly aligned, and it's so close. I think it's going to be okay. So if you are going to sharpen this, you do have to make sure you are sharpening it perfectly flat and at a 90 degree to the sides of the actual blade itself. Otherwise you're going to have a blade coming out that's askew and there is no way to adjust it. I'm going to leave it like this for the time being. I'm going to go grab a piece of wood and we're going to take some shavings and see what we think. Right, there's going to be absolutely no reason why anybody will say that I'm not giving this a fair test. I've got some softwood, some pine, and I've got some hardwood as oak. Now if you have planed any wood in the past, you'll notice that depending on which direction you put your plane, it's going to be harder or easier in one direction or the other. Now this is because with wood it has a grain, and when you hand plane you want to hand plane in the direction of where the grain is going. Now an easy way of seeing this is just to run your hands over the wood. Now in one direction it's going to be nice and smooth, and the other is a little bit like running your hand through your hair. Unfortunately I don't have that ability in most cases, but one way is going to feel smooth and then the other way is going to feel quite rough. And it's exactly the same with wood. One way will feel smooth and one way will feel rough, and the way that you rub and it feels smooth, that is the way that the wood grain is going. In my case the wood grain is going in this direction, so when I put it in the vise I'm going to be mindful of which way I'm going to be planing, and obviously I'm going to be planing towards you guys, and I've placed it so that the arrow is pointing to you as well. And now it's securely in place, and as I said the arrow is pointing towards you. I'm just going to take a very light pass. Now as you can see I'm not really taking that much, so all I'm going to do is advance that blade a little bit further, making sure to lock it back down as well with the lever cap, and I'm going to take a few more swipes. So it's taken a nice even draws now, and I'm getting some really nice shavings. Now also as well you'll find that I'm actually going at a diagonal. When I'm pushing it through the wood I'm placing the plane at a slight diagonal. This is purely to take less stress off of, if I'm doing it like that, the stress is on that entire blade, but if I put it at a slight angle, the only real pressure that I'm putting on the blade is on one side or the other, and then as I'm pushing it through it's able to take a nice clean cut, and as you see it's actually curling up as well, so it's more evidence I'm sort of pushing it at an angle rather than face on. If I put it face on I'll also get a nice clean cut, but I do feel that it does take a little bit more effort. Let's have a look at some of these curls. and as you see, they're nice and fine. The wood is still sort of holding up in places as well, which is a good sign. And yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So that's to sort of plane up one side, but let's face it, you're not going to be using a plane like this to plane a flat piece of wood. These are for chamfering or for veneers. So let's take a chamfer cut now, just to show you exactly what it can do on this oak. So again, to take a chamfer cut, I'm going in the direction of the grain of the wood. The hand plane, I'm going to put the plane on one of the corners at an approximately 45-degree angle, and then I'm just going to start taking some strokes along, and the deeper I get, the more pronounced that angle or that chamfer is going to be. And again, I'm getting some really nice curls coming off of the hand plane, and that proves to me that that blade is extremely sharp, and it's exactly as I said to you at the start of the video. It's nice and sharp. So again, I'll take some on this corner, and again, really nice shavings. The deeper I'm getting into that chamfer, the wider the curls are going to be. So again, just take a few swipes along the top, and I'm getting some really nice shavings, and it is incredibly smooth as well. So that was the oak. I've got this piece of pine here, and again, I want to sort of see which way the grain is going. Now, unfortunately, I can't feel in any direction which way it's going to be going. So I'm going to be using telltale signs that you might see on the piece of wood. Now, if you look here, there is a slight splinter, and you can see that the wood is sharper in that direction, and you can see that it's sort of rolled off here. So I can tell that the wood grain is going in this direction, so pointing downwards. So again, I can make a visual representation of this using a pencil on the wood, and it's a visual aid for me just to know, or just to remember, which way the grain is going to be facing. So I'm going to be doing exactly the same as what I did with the oak, running it in one direction, taking a nice clean cut over the side of this piece of pine, and then I'll start putting on some chamfers just to show you what it's going to do. So again, wow, not a bad first go. It's nice and thin. It looks really, really good. Now obviously pine is a lot softer than the oak, so the plane is actually going through it a lot easier. To use the phrase "a knife through butter," yeah, it's taken a nice clean cut, and I'm getting some beautiful shavings off of it as well. Now again, the chamfer, because at an angle it's going to start off really fine. You might even see that it's not even cutting, or it doesn't feel like it's cutting. As you can see, I'm getting some really nice shavings off of it, starting to really cut into that chamfer now as well. And again, the deeper I go into the chamfer, the wider these curls or the shavings are going to be. As you can see, this is the shavings from the first couple of strokes, and then this is what I ended up with. And again, it's beautifully done. It feels incredible to touch. The chamfer's good, and again, opposite chamfer, just running the blade up the wood like this. Getting some lovely shavings again. We look at that now. It's a beautiful finish. It looks really, really good. It feels nice and soft, and it's flat as well, which is good. Now, I've tried to come up with an idea why you would use these side pieces, and I've come up with this. It's just a piece of MDF with a stop on the end and then a thin gauge of wood. The feet or the sides of the plane are going to act as my stops. So once I start getting onto the MDF, it's not going to allow me to cut any further unless I adjust this. So let's just take a few shavings and see what we come up with. Oh, yeah, it's come off again. Right, I'm pretty much there anyway, I think. But as you can see, if I move the wood underneath the plane, you can see that the feet are in touch with the MDF base, and it's no longer able to cut anymore. So I must have cut down deep enough without even realising it. So I hope that sort of explained a little bit more about this hand plane, showing you its capabilities, and I hope you can make a judgment as to whether this belongs in your tool armoury or not. So it's been around about 4 weeks since I started filming this video, and there's been a few reasons why it's been so long since. One, I had quite a large commission came in that I just needed to focus on and put all my attention to. And two, I had already filmed the ending of this video. However, as I was doing so, I turned the plane over in my hand and noticed that there was quite a big issue. And rather than just filming another quick sort of outro, I wanted to really dedicate a little bit of time at the end of this video just to go over exactly why it's taken so long. So as I said, I'd already filmed the ending of this outro, and I was sort of moving the plane around in my hand, sort of saying everything that I'd already mentioned throughout the video, that on first looks it looks quite modern, quite sleek. It looked quite a modern hand plane, and on taking it out of the box I thought it looked quite nice. However, as I turned it over, I noticed that there was some large chunks taken out of this blade, and for the use that I put it through on this video, it really shouldn't have caused this much damage. So over the last couple of days I have been testing the blade just to see whether it's actually high carbon steel or not, and unfortunately running a file over it just proves to me that this blade isn't high carbon steel. If you take, for example, the Stanley hand plane that I've got, number 4, and you do exactly the same test with the same file, the file actually skates over the top of this blade, and that does prove to me that that blade is high carbon steel. However, when you do it with this blade, it does sort of cut in, and it just proves that it is a lot softer in material. Now, I did pass this around the workshop and to other people on my yard, and I just really wanted to get their sort of ideas from it, what they thought of the plane after a little bit of use. And unfortunately they all had the same issue, that it looks rather nice and it looks modern and sleek. However, once they start using it and using it in the hand, it just doesn't feel right. Now, if you've watched any of my other review videos in the past, you will know that I do like to push the boundaries of the products that I'm reviewing, because at the end of the day, I don't want to recommend any product to you that you'll go out and purchase with your hard-earned money and then find that it's actually not up to any good. I have really pushed the boundaries of this little plane, and if I'm being honest, I'm using it very similar to the way that I would use my Stanley number 4, and this little plane is definitely not rated for that kind of work. However, saying that, I do realise that there are going to be some people watching this video who will go out and buy a plane similar to this and use it in that way. So I really like to go overboard with my testing, so you can get a really good idea of what this plane is actually capable of. Now sadly, because of the blade being so soft, this isn't a plane that's going to be in my workshop. I can't rely on this blade ever staying sharp or keeping an edge without blunting or chipping out extremely quickly. And for me, this is more of a desk ornament rather than a workshop workhorse, and for that purpose alone, unfortunately this plane is not going to be staying in my collection. Now I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it's not going to be the perfect review video for some people, however I hope you've taken a little bit of information from this, and if you have, please do click that like button, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing as well. I'll leave all the links to where you can check out this hand plane for yourself in the description below, and until the next time, I'll see you again soon.